ever since I was a young kid, I was fascinated by Latin, really all things ancient. And I'd always wanted to learn it. I always heard funny stories that when we were starting in middle school to study foreign languages, I chose Latin as my first choice. And I was really convinced that we were going to get enough interest to support the class, 20 students at least. We didn't. So I was kicked off to my second choice, which was Spanish, which in retrospect wasn't bad, but I always kept the flame of wanting to learn Latin in the back of my mind. I did do it in high school for a little bit. It didn't stick for a variety of reasons. I just think in the terms of how it was taught, etc. But through college afterwards, I kept always wanting to get to it. And then I just figured I saw ALI. I'm like, let me give this a shot. Let me, finally put in the time and effort to study the language and do what I've always wanted to do for many, many years. So that's why I've wanted to get into Latin. You mentioned Greek as well. As I said, I've always been interested in the ancient world, the culture, the history, civilization, religion, really everything. And ancient Greek is a part of that. It's a bit harder to sometimes find resources from that for that area of study
Definitely.
than it is for Latin. So when I saw that it was offered to, I decided to bite the bullet and eventually do both the classes at the same time. Latin, have a few more years on it. So, and really also just, I think learning the language for me is not, I do like languages a lot. I find them fascinating. They're like, sort of mental puzzles. But as I said, I love the ancient world. And I think that studying the language really helps put your foot in the door in a way that just studying it cannot. Many people have said that by learning a language, you're doing more than just putting sort of puzzles in your head. You were really sort of donning the clothes of that culture, and you're starting to think like they did. That's an extra difficulty with Latin and ancient Greek, because we're talking about civilizations that no longer exist in their original forms. But I think that actually learning the language helps me sort of get a little bit of a glimpse, peek a little bit behind the curtain to see what these, I have the history, I have the knowledge of how they lived, what they did, and to really actually get a bit of a more intimate understanding of what was going on in their minds by learning how they spoke.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love the image of donning their clothes, like dressing up as a Roman and entering their world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you studied Spanish before and tried Latin for a little bit in high school. How does learning with ALI compare to your previous foreign language learning experiences?
So the good thing, what has mostly pleasantly surprised me about ALI is the quality of the teachers. I studied Spanish for many years. I've studied a few other languages as well over the years. And I've had a variety of teachers of different qualities, different characteristics. Each have had sort of pros and cons, but some of the cons of those teachers over the years were pretty important. I'd sometimes have native speakers who obviously knew the language very well, but sometimes knew it too well that they would have difficulty explaining something that was second nature to them, really natural to them.
Right.
And additionally, there was, I'd have teachers who were not native speakers, and perhaps they spoke it proficiently, but not really over the hump of fluency. So they might know it well enough, but they would say sometimes things that were incorrect or not know a few too many things, where there was always this bit of impediment. One thing that surprised me with ALI is that through the teachers at least I've worked with in the past several years in the various classes, the expertise is really astounding. Obviously, there are very few, native speakers of Latin or ancient Greek left in the world. So everyone teaching here really, has had to put in the time and effort and the love to learn these languages. and they're really good at it. And that's what surprised me, is that, very rarely do I get in, I don't know, let me get back to you. But any sort of question on really the most minute thing, I might read something in a book, and when studying on my own, and say that's a very sort of, a minute grammar point, or,
Right.
a random third or fourth principal part of a verb that just seems so obscure. And then it'll come up in class, and the teacher will know it just like that. Very second nature. That's surprising to me, in a very good way, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
They really know their stuff. There's a passion to it that I think if many of us have learned in schools or other fora, is that you're sort of stuck with the teachers or the resources you're given. Here, since I chose it the other way, I got lucky to have chosen teachers who really know their stuff and are really versed in and out of it, and can, really speak fluently, think on their feet, know almost everything, on their toes. And that's impressed me. And the passion comes through in the class lessons.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for our teachers, because they are really impressive. And you make a good point. I hadn't thought about the fact that these languages are so foreign, not only in place, but in time, that anybody who learns ancient Greek or learns Latin, really has to put in the time. They're not going to get to, study abroad in ancient Rome. Right. and just kind of pick it up. They're going to have to work hard to learn it. And while that acts as a barrier, it's also an advantage, because then the people who really do learn it can really teach it well, because they've kind of suffered. And then hopefully they can help their students not suffer as much and have more fun.
Yeah, the depth of knowledge I have is real. I've had teachers in the past who have spoken even ancient languages, or at least know them sufficiently well enough. But there was often a sense of, let me go just check that, or I'm reading from the book. I'm kind of iffy on this, which may be understandable in a high school context, in a small class with maybe not so many Latin students as who were in the past generations, but that's not really the case with ALI's teachers. The ones I've had, there isn't this sort of superficial proficiency. It is a real, nothing's getting by them. Deep understanding of the language, where the grammar, the syntax, the vocabulary, these languages are pretty complex. And I'm being very honest when I say that I'm extremely impressed at how natural these languages are to the teachers. It's humbling.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. So what classes are you currently in? And so you've been studying Latin for 2 years. So where are you at?
3 years, and I'm in the third year of Latin now.
Okay.
And the first year of the ancient Greek.
Okay. And so what are you reading in the Latin class?
We have Roma Aeterna. I have my hard copy.
Yeah, there it is.
I like traveling with it. I got the hard copy just because, it's a treasured place on my bookshelf. So
yeah, all right, rightfully so.
So yeah, we're reading that.
And are you in the chapters of Livy right now? Are you past Livy?
We are still doing some Aeneas.
Okay.
But yeah, there's, one of the good things too is we kind of mix things in and out. And if there's something relevant, will that be brought up? We've still been doing mostly Aeneas for now. The Virgil, I should say, sorry, the Aeneid about him. So that's what we've been doing mostly now, and we'll get to the book, I guess the remainder of it following semester.
Yeah, that's great. And so then you're going to be doing Latin 302 in the spring, where you'll move from the Roma Aeterna adaptation of the Aeneid into reading book 1 of the Aeneid proper. And then you'll also be reading some other primary sources. But yeah, it's starting to the Latin's starting to get real now.
Yeah, it's the ascent of the mountain has
Right.
become noticeable.
Yeah. And how's Greek going?
It's going really well. It's yeah, I like it a lot. It's definitely a change. Latin. I am always so grateful that the Normans invaded England, because it made dumping all those Norman French words that come from Latin into our language has made picking up the vocabulary of Latin a much simpler task.
Yeah.
Greek is an extra. There's a hurdle there because the words tend to be a lot more different. So obviously there's some familiarities because English does get a decent number of words from Greek as well.
Right.
But with that said, I do like the challenge. It's an interesting language as well. So I'm very much enjoying that.
Good. Yeah. And one thing I've noticed is that knowing a decent amount of Latin before you go into a Greek class also helps, because while there's not as many English Greek cognates, there are more Latin Greek cognates. So that Latin is kind of an extra support that, if going fresh into Greek, could be even harder.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say is your favorite part or favorite parts of your ALI classes?
I think for me, my favorite parts are when everything comes together and everything just sort of clicks. When I'm reading something, especially if it's a bit more advanced, maybe it takes me twice or thrice to read it, but I was like, I finally get it. I see how things are fitting together. When I think about the languages in my daily life, and it just sort of gets my brain working. I was telling a story in the Greek class last time. Don't remember if you were there. I've been studying my vocabulary in the morning on my app on my phone and my flashcards. And I was walking home from having breakfast with a friend. I walked past a yard where a giant dog jumped out of the fence there. Fortunately, this is quite a vicious dog. So definitely jumped back. But as I jumped back, in my sort of instinct, I immediately screamed out like "Hakun!" I went from fear of being, mauled by this dog immediately to, I was being exhilarated. I was like, what? The first thing that came to my mind thinking this was saying dog in ancient Greek. So that was pretty
That's great.
And also, what I also like about the classes, and I think what's important for me in LI, is that the motivation to keep going forward. I just mentioned when we started talking, I've always had, at the very least, Latin on the back burner. And to me, it was always a bit difficult to get it off the back burner if something comes up. Life just happens, and then, weeks turn into months, into years. The structure of the classes, the pace of it, which is quick, but not too quick. It's not breakneck speed, but neither is it, too slow. You learn a lot and you learn it fast, but it's not impossible to chew on and swallow. Right. The fact that there is that motivation, the prodding to keep going forward. Okay, I do have class today, so I do have to make sure I keep up the reading. I do need to know the words. I don't really have an excuse to fall behind now. I like that about the classes as well, is the fact that it is forcing me to go forward. There's a treadmill running and I have to keep up with it. That keeps me engaged. That keeps me learning in a way I would not have been able to personally do on my own. I think a lot of people are probably similar. Yes. And the interaction too, it's not even just a motivation, but the interaction with the teachers. So it's not just an empty motivation, but, they're filling in the gaps there. So it really is a forward propulsion.
Yeah. So I know you were traveling in the Mediterranean, and I got to see, not too long ago, I got to see some nice Roman ruins that you saw. So kind of on that note, what are you most looking forward to in the future as you develop your Latin and Greek skills? Do you have any big goals? I really want to read this. I want to do this.
I would like to be able to read texts in their original. That would be great. I think trying to keep things modest in the sense of, and I think I will get there when I get to the point where I'm, thinking more in these languages. When I see these teachers in ALI who are spitfire, having a conversation, immediately correcting mistakes or knowing something, some obscure thing. I want to be able to do that. I mentioned Spanish before. I studied for many years. I lived several years in Spanish-speaking countries. Obviously, it's hard to do with Latin and Greek.
Yeah.
But it is possible to get there. I've done it myself with, languages. I've seen these teachers do it. It is possible to get there. I do want to read texts, but I also just want to be able to have the personal knowledge. I can communicate this way, meet people in real life at some point, to really do both. I started off saying to get in the mindset of the people who lived back then. And it is important to read the text, the plays, the poems, the prose, in their original, in my opinion, to as we said, don their clothes, sort of possess their minds a little bit and to see how they were thinking, because there is that power and magic in the words. And that's all very valuable, and I want to do that. But I think also just understanding, even carrying a conversation, even if it's just in my head, but I know I'm doing it fluently. I think there's a lot of merit to that. That also gets you in the cadence of how they lived, how they thought. It wasn't all just great literature back then. People were living lives. And I think when I do see people communicating in Latin or ancient Greek, they are replicating it, they are replicating that mindset. And I do want to be able to get to the point where I can do both.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Well, this has been great. Thanks so much. Unless there's anything else you want to share.
No, just thanks for all the great effort you put into this.
Well, thanks for your effort and for sticking with us. I mean, you're kind of a pioneer, at least with the Latin program. Yeah,
it's exciting. It's a lot of work, but it's good. I like the fact that I have work to do tasks is keeping my mind sharp. I think too many people get stuck into the work is done, turn on TV. I like the fact that I'm giving my head a workout and learning a lot. And it is cool. I think there's also a cultural cache to be able to say, like, yeah, I speak on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not so bad.